Ladies and gentlemen of Night City, what is going on, y'all? Your dude Sly here, back at it with another Sly Nation Cyberpunk news video for you. I'll be rounding up some of the more recent news articles, podcasts and stories about CDPR's next blockbuster hit, along with some juicy stuff laid out at Gamescom and anything else new for the end of August. September is almost here, and with that, we have some big news coming our way here pretty soon. But first, I made a Cyberpunk 2077 video that was kind of like a deep dive history lesson about a week or so ago. And it has just about every need-to-know fact from the Cyberpunk universe, from corporate wars and gangs to characters, NPCs, relationships, affiliations, timelines, the story behind Night City, etc. It is absolutely packed with backstory. And as we get closer and closer to April 2020, some of the names, characters, and technology might not sound all that familiar to you, and it could possibly cause some to miss out on important connections within the game itself, or when you're reading the lore in-game. So I made that video in order for the news videos like this one not only make a little more sense, but the biggest reason, immersion. If you go into Cyberpunk and start reading all this lore, talking to characters, corpos, NPCs, or two NPCs talking to each other and you just overhear them, they might start mentioning things like the collapse, or the corporate wars, or the fourth corporate war, even the consequences of the soul killer virus within the net. You might not have any idea what the hell is going on, and that video fixes it. So hopefully it gives your gameplay much more immersion. So definitely check that out, as I thought it turned out pretty good. However, in this video, guys, let's check out some recent news from Gamescom, as well as other recent news from podcasts, articles, etc. And first up, let's get the big one out of the way for this video: new gameplay. Now, originally, CDPR had plans to set up a booth at PAX West, simultaneously release the demo from E3 and Gamescom, and then make it open to the public. Well, CDPR canceled its PAX booth, but still plans on showing off parts of the demo to the public. There will be a 15-minute snippet taken from the original Gamescom demo, and then that will be shown on a live stream, which happens to be in just a few days' time from now. August 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time US, or if you're in Europe, that's going to be 8 p.m. CEST, Central European Time. So that live stream will not only host a demo snippet, but also a few interviews as well. So that is something you definitely cannot miss. And if you do, I'll have it up here and I'll be breaking it down as well. Now, this will likely be one of the last large doses of gameplay we're going to see for quite some time, if ever. Cyberpunk releases before next year's E3 in June, so unless they do something at PAX in January 2020, this might be it. My only issue with this is that it's not the full demo the media got to see at E3 and at Gamescom, but instead a 15-minute segment from that demo, which, if memory serves me correctly, was close to 40 minutes long. As always, I'll be drooling all over it, and I got you covered if you happen to miss it. Now, why is it down to 15 minutes instead of the full 40? It could be that something within development changed, and now something in the demo doesn't make sense, or it won't be in the game, something like that. That's my guess, but I have no idea. Now, so far from what we know of this demo, it's going to take us into a part of the city called Pacifica. We are there to make contact with the Haitian gang called the Voodoo Boys. You are seeking them because the Voodoo Boys are the best netrunners in Night City, and one of them in particular. You're searching for a lovely lady named Alt Cunningham. If you wish to get the lowdown on Alt Cunningham, check out the video I mentioned earlier at the start of this one. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this part of the trailer right here is actually part of the demo we'll see here in a few days. The second in command of the Voodoo Boys was shown off in a recent Xbox and Game Informer article, as you can see right here. So the lady in the background, I believe, is the same character. And I think this little snippet here shows us actually entering the net as a netrunner to go ahead and try to find this other lady. Now, moving on to something a little bit older, but I still wanted to talk about it nonetheless. With all these various CGI trailers and gameplay demos going on, we were shown quite a few differing art styles within Night City. The city itself has a long and quite bloody history, and the past handful of decades weren't exactly the most peaceful either. Each area within the city reflects the past by its visual style, and that can be separated into 4 distinct categories. So the 4 distinct categories within Cyberpunk, we have entropism, kitsch, neo-militarism, and neo-kitsch. One of the largest catastrophes within this game's universe was a time called the Collapse. Once again, I go into more detail in the other video I mentioned earlier, but basically, it was pretty much a worldwide shutdown of the financial market and system. So think of something like the 1930s depression, but in the modern age. Martha Jonkers, a concept artist at CD Projekt Red, said, quote, "It was a time when people were very, very poor, so their design was very practical, and it wasn't about looking great, it wasn't about decoration, it was about pure practicality using cheap materials. Things are very cornered, and a color palette that's really subdued," end quote. Entropism is of course derived from entropy, and you see certain parts of the city with this dark-hued look. Old neon signs, cars from the 1980s with modern-day computers inside of it. It's basically the poor's way of making do with what they can scrounge together. Moving on here, the next style or art pillar within Cyberpunk is called kitsch. After the years and years of hoarding junk and painting everything gray, the people wanted liberation, some more, fun back in their lives. Everything is painted in fun, clean colors that tended to excite and lead to your imagination, a sort of free period within Cyberpunk's history. Think back to the flower power days of the US's 1970, it's similar to that. However, just like the 70s, good times never last, and that leads to our next style or pillar of art, neo-militarism. Now, if you've ever watched the movie Equilibrium, that pretty much sums up the style to a T. Massive concrete and steel buildings with, huge massive courtyards, almost shrines to the holy corporation that built it. Grand entrances with clean lines and advanced technology hidden just about everywhere behind concrete. This style of building just oozes with oppression, and it's like large buildings show the people that corporation is in control and its strength is what keeps you safe. Once again, quoting from Yonkers, neo-militarism is separated by the austerity of entropism by its sleek and domineering aesthetic. It's power dressing for the already powerful and has an air of practical luxury. Unsurprisingly, this pillar also includes the various organized militias of Night City who wield their imposing appearance as a weapon of intimidation, end quote. Okay guys, and finally moving on to the last art style or art pillar within Cyberpunk, we have neo-kitsch. Now, neo-kitsch is once again bringing back freedom from the oppressive corporations. It uses bold, bright colors to show off a fun, yet sophisticated time. Neo-kitsch is different from kitsch in that the rich start to play more of a role here, and these newfound freedoms are offering up luxuries that are flaunted as not only a show of freedom and power, but mainly personal wealth. Animals in the Cyberpunk universe are extremely rare. For various reasons, I think it's something like 70% of the world's animal populations are extinct. Now, don't quote me on that exact number, but it's something around there. On top of that, natural materials are now also harder to come by than manufactured goods. So neo-kitsch brings in the colors and fun from the kitsch era, but then smash it together with luxury and excess. Once again, going back to the same interview, Yonkers said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that in neo-kitsch, they use these natural materials because it's the most expensive stuff you can find in Night City. When someone walks around with real animal fur, it has to be neo-kitsch because only the rich would wear a dead animal to show off style, when modern materials are not only more effective than animal skins, but cheaper as well. So these four styles can be seen in different parts of Night City. If you're in a really poor environment, you're going to see entropism mixed with a bit of kitsch and neo-kitsch. Once you go to the downtown or city center area, it'll be neo-kitsch mixed with neo-militarism. These differing art styles kind of tell the player what kind of environment they are entering, sort of storytelling through art. Now, all that was kind of old news, but it wasn't really talked about all that much, so I wanted to bring it back up again since it was kind of brought back up at Gamescom. Okay guys, so next up, let's touch base back on the demo itself. We're going to be in an area known as Pacifica with lots of entropism art style, function over form. And because of that, it's home to like mostly poor people. And in this case, it's home to most of the Haitian population within Night City. And of course, it's also home to the gang or faction known as the Voodoo Boys. According to Yonkers, you can tell a lot just by seeing what kind of art style is in front of you. Okay y'all, next up, let's talk about some classes. Now we know that at the start of the game, you can basically choose a type of background class and you pretty much build up from there. However, CDPR is really driving home the point that we will not be roped into one specific or a set class. You can spend points outside of your background class and start to merge with other traditional classes or become like a jack of all trades or just go down one single path. Choice is a big theme within CD Projekt Red. And speaking of choice, a few months ago, there was a huge debacle online about the character creator, and of course it had to do with choosing a gender. Apparently it caused quite a stir within some groups online, but long story short, when we start up the game for the very first time and start creating our version of V, choosing a gender will no longer be an option as it has been permanently removed. Instead, gender is now roped in and viewed as a design or a look to your character, I guess you could call it. You can look and act as a female or male without actually choosing it. Look, I'm a very open-minded dude here, but some things are just a little silly in my opinion. We have a game where we inhale drugs to get high, so our reflexes are faster, and it makes it that much more easier to pick up and carry a naked, semi-dead woman that's been floating in a bathtub, while shooting our way out of a body chop shop. So all that's cool, but don't make me choose male or female, right? Anyway, sorry if I'm being insensitive here, but this is a game, and stuff like that just doesn't really make sense to me. Anyways, moving on here, once you choose a unique male or female look, your base class will have some unique perks that will come earlier and easier than if you choose another class. And a recent Shack News interview with Richard Borzamowski, one of the producers of Cyberpunk, they go over a few examples and continue the whole not being roped into one class thing. For example, in one of the demos, you see different styles played through in one mission. You have a solo, a netrunner, and a techie. Different styles of play being used within the same mission. However, Richard Borzamowski mentioned that certain start classes will have unique benefits over others. You can learn all the traits and skills of any class throughout the whole game, but choosing your background class is a pretty important decision. For example, Borzamowski talks about the robot spider tank seen here, which we now know is called Flathead, and it can become one of your companions throughout the game. A techie has the skill which lets you use Flathead early on by use of a unique piece of implanted cyberware, which techies have from the get-go if you select that class. However, other classes do not have it. So if you start your background class as, say, a solo, it might take you quite a while to be able to find and afford a cyberware implant so you can control Flathead, while, like we just talked about, techies can pretty much do it naturally. And speaking of companions, in the same interview, issuing commands was brought up, and according to the producer, Borzamowski, besides a few select circumstances, you cannot command your partners in any way. However, the one exception for that is a Flathead. It'll be able to perform takedowns, pick up items, hack or fry systems from far away, or go to unreachable areas and do all kinds of fun stuff. Once you're in the heat of battle and you're too busy to tell Flathead to do anything, the AI will then kick in and it'll fight in the way it sees fit, just like your human companions. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. Alright y'all, and moving along here, a few snippets of news also poked its head out of a recent podcast via WCCF Tech. A CDPR developer by the name of Sasco told WCCF Tech a couple of cool new freebies. And first up, map size. Now the map size has been talked about forever, but we now have an official source saying the Cyberpunk map is actually going to be much smaller than the last CDPR game released, The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 map was absolutely enormous, and it's no surprise, but a lot of that map was simply forest or mountains, wilderness, wide open spaces that really didn't have much into it. But even though the map for Cyberpunk will be smaller, according to Sasco, the density of Night City alone is impressive. The map itself might be a bit smaller, but the city was built to mimic the real world. So there's going to be basements, houses you can go inside, and of course, massive amounts of skyscrapers, each have many different floors that you can explore. However, the part that interested me the most, Night City is full of underground areas, and to top it off, Sasco even mentioned that our characters can swim. So that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities, and I find that kind of exciting. If you happen to watch any of my other news videos, in a couple of them we actually talked about maps. And in other interviews, one of the devs mentions that we can actually leave Night City and go out to check the surrounding areas, such as like the huge power plant that feeds the city's energy needs, and even the desert. So it could be some kind of huge hydroelectric dam, and then maybe it's riddled with hideouts and caves along the Sierra Nevada mountains. I mean, who knows? Even though the city is amazing itself, leaving it can be just as fun. Okay, y'all, so as we start to wind this bad boy down, last thing, let's talk about loot. Now, a bit ago, we talked about the Flathead and that you could issue commands to it if you started out as a techie, or that you could upgrade yourself and install the correct cyberware to be able to do it as a solo or other classes. But where do you find it, and how does loot work? Well, the answer, unfortunately, is kind of vague, but it does give us an idea into loot. According to the same WCCF Tech podcast, loot will not be randomized in any large way, such as RNG loot drops or stuff like that. Certain areas within the city and within the map will drop certain types of gear based on where you are and the surroundings you're in. The culture of the area, the different gangs, corporations or stores, technology, etc. How all of that works without RNG, I'm not quite sure. But they also said that all classes can craft and that materials will be spread out in the exact same way. Certain materials can only come from certain areas, such as the factory that produces them, or gangs that use that certain type of hardware or tech that you're looking for. Now, I have many more questions about loot within Cyberpunk, and hopefully we'll hear a little more of that the closer we get to release. If you wish to check all of this stuff out for yourself, the link to all of these articles, interviews, and podcasts can be found down below in the description box if you wish to check it out for yourself. But for now, guys, that's really about it. Nothing really earth-shattering or, huge news announcements, but this is kind of the roundup from the previous week. As a last-minute add-in, I have been getting a ton of questions concerning the upcoming PS5 and the next-gen Xbox, and if CDPR will have a version ready for the advanced console and not just, some quick and crappy port. There hasn't been any official word on this as of right now, but all signs point to yes, that there will be an official version for the Xbox 2 or whatever it's called in the PS5. In an older interview from last year, CD Projekt Red's president Adam Kaczynski said that Cyberpunk is one of the most advanced games they've ever built, and that CDPR stands ready to support it on all platforms. He goes on to say that Cyberpunk is built in such a way that it's easy to adapt the game for future technology, and that it can use very powerful future tech. Kaczynski didn't downright say that it would be available on the upcoming PS5 and next-gen Xbox for obvious reasons, but given the style of CDPR, it leaves little doubt in my mind. And now, guys, we are officially done. Like I said, not a ton of earth-shaking news for this week, but it's news nonetheless. I absolutely cannot wait for the 30th. I'm pretty stoked about it, as we'll not only get to see the 15-minute edit from one of the demos, but a few interviews will be present within the live stream as well. So definitely look forward to that, as I'm sure there will be plenty of news to talk about. But I am out of here, folks. As always, thank you all so much for not only watching Sly Nation, but for your continued support. There are a lot of choices on YouTube, and it's awesome that you continue to come back to watch me. If you're new around here, then welcome to Sly Nation, virtual imaginary fist bump. Hope you enjoyed yourself, and if you did, then feel free to smack that thumbs up. But if this video gave you an STD, you know what to do. If you're a netrunner yourself, feel free to check me out on Twitter or Facebook at Sly Nation or Sly Nation Gaming on the FB. My social channels are pretty lame, unfortunately, and I kind of need some help, so stop on by if you so wish to do so. Subscribe for more Cyberpunk 2077 news, Destiny 2, Shadowkeep, Anthem, Star Wars, and any other open-world RPG MMO that tickles my fancy. Take care, ladies and gents, and keep those eyes open for lots more vids coming out here soon, but until then, this is your dude Sly, and I will catch you all next time.